What's going on? What's going on? This is your host here, Leader Johnson, and we are here with one of the best fly analysts in the game, Jamey Baskow, my guy. And we are here to talk about what has happened in the draft. Real rebuilding mode. No more new coach. I'm glad Rick Toshe. I like him. I think that was a good move for the organization. I want to talk about Porter Martone, and I want to talk about Jack Nesbitt. Now, what do you say ultimately about Porter? Was that a great pick? What do you say about that?
Porter Martone was a fantastic pick. He's a winger that the Flyers needed for years. He provides size, and they haven't had size, on a wing like that since like John LeClair or something of that nature. A one that can score like a Scotty Hartnell. You can put 30, 35 in the net each year, upwards of 40 goals. Same thing with John LeClair. I mean, he's plateaued, 50 plus, for a few seasons there and stuff. The Flyers haven't had that in years, and that's exactly what he provides. He's a hell of a player. The one thing he needs to work on is skating, but I think a lot of people need to work on skating if you want to be quite frank. But yeah, he's a great selection. Somebody that the Flyers needed that size on the wing, somebody to complement Matvei Michkov. Right. I think that Michkov could play on his off wing and then have Trevor Zegras down the middle, and then eventually pair with Michkov on the Porter Martone, in the future on the right. I think that's where the Flyers are aiming, and he's close to NHL ready.
You're thinking about now the pick. A lot of people is half and half people. They traded up. They traded up to number 12. Now You're talking about getting Jack Nesbitt. Now I'm gonna say about Porter. Yeah, I thought that was a great looking at his film. Like, man, this guy, he could come in. He could possibly. I say 2 years, but man, I mean, he has the talent. He's a captain. He's a leader. I like the way he plays. Now Nesbitt. He's a Philadelphia guy. Physical, can score goals. I mean, this man can make moves. Now, people were up and down. People were up and down. People were thinking that when they traded up, a lot of people was like, well, there were other guys they could have grabbed. What do you think about this trade up? What do you think? Some people say they could have got him at the pick they were already at.
That is correct. But the NHL is a crapshoot. Actually, they thought that he was going to go, to the Vancouver Canucks. That's how high they thought of Jack Nesbitt. Yeah. So when the Flyers are getting this information of teams, it was the same thing like last year with Jet Luchenko. There were teams that wanted to take Jet Luchenko in the Flyers spot, and it just so happened that Jet Luchenko fell to them. This happens all the time. Like the trade was able to happen because Roger McQueen went to the Ducks, and that was Pittsburgh's guy. And so they were able to move up and grab Nesbitt, who was highly touted by these other teams. It's not like he wasn't touted at all. Vancouver was thinking of selecting him, so he was up there. He was up there at pick 5. Some teams were thinking, obviously. So that's not a bad selection. The Flyers need sides down the middle, and that's what he provides. Now, everyone needs to work on skating. Mind you, when people say they need to work on skating, these kids are 17, 18, 19 years old. Of course, they need to work on. There's always a player or two that need to work on skating. The majority of them do, So, but he's a great selection. Again, he's one that can put the puck in the net, and he goes to the areas that you need to score goals.
Yes, I mean he really
those dirty areas. Tip in a damn goal or two. When was the last time we seen Flyers do that stuff? Not named Michkov. Michkov goes to those dirty areas. That's where he pays his price.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I really like his play. I mean, back to the Flyers getting back to beating up people anyway. I like that. And I say one thing. He's a guy I feel like he's there. And now I'm glad you clarified that because people up and down, people like they complimented him, but they just felt like at that pick. And I'm like, well, they might have got like any other draft. They get
right.
That a guy could be gone before then from the talks we don't know inside, like you're telling them. Yeah. They're going to go up and get him because they like him that much.
Exactly, and that's what has to happen, and that's why they moved up, and snagged him. And you know what? And he's going to be worth it. Is he NHL ready? No, but in a year or two, let him develop appropriately. See, some people forget about Jet Luchenko in the same token. He has another year with the Gulf Storm possibly if he doesn't make the Flyers this year, and that's okay if he doesn't. Don't panic. It doesn't mean he's not a good player. It just means he needs more time to develop these players appropriately. Right. The Flyers have played. The Flyers in general have paid the price in the past with hauling these guys up too early. Remember the one that everyone can remember, to include yourself, leader, and we talked about it before, is Daniel Zubris. You remember Daniel Zubris?
Man.
The Flyers called him up. Like he was supposed to be the real deal. They needed a center. They needed a center. So in his draft, what does he do? He makes the team, doesn't send him back, and what happened? They paid the price. It tarnished his career a bit. Now he did go on, had some successful years with the Devils and whatnot. But still, I mean that's what happens. You pay the price.
Right.
And you pay the price if you want these guys too early to make the club. The Flyers don't need them right now necessarily. They can skip next season, but they're not supposed to be a contender. You wait for that. Wait for that for a year or two. We got to. Yes, I hate to say this, but
when they're ready,
there's a little more patience that is required, and the Flyers will do their due dander and make the playoffs next year, hopefully. That Zegras deal is a step in the right direction, but the Zegras deal offered the Flyers to take a player like Porter Martone. They didn't need that. Okay, we need that center like now, like James Higgins. He's NHL ready, in my opinion. You know what I mean? So, but they didn't need that. They could. I want the damn net. And that's what the Flyers have been starving for, for years. And finally, they got that player in part of players, I would say, Martone and Nesbitt.
Right. You give me, and we talked about Brink. We were talking about Brink. You said, what are they saying about Martone? I'm thinking when he steps in.
Yeah, so in regards to Martone, he is close to NHL ready. You'll find out if the Flyers think that high of him to make the team this year if Bobby Brink is moved. If Bobby Brink gets moved, that means that the Flyers believe that Martone can possibly make the Flyers at the end of training camp going into the season. Obviously, he'll make the roster outright. Now, if Bobby Brink is here come August, September, and he's ready for training camp, then that means that the Flyers are going to send Martone back more than likely.
Interesting. So you're saying, what you're telling me is the same thing with Morgan Frost. The same thing, guys that left. So you thinking Brink could be on the way out regardless?
I think that Bobby Brink, I think there were talks about moving Brink in terms of being one of those players. And it's not that they want to move him, but he's one of those players that they could dangle because there is, a logjam at the wing position. So if they're thinking more highly of Martone at this point, then they're going to go with Martone than Brink. Brink had a great season last year, and I'll say great, not in terms of production, but he had a great season for Bobby Brink. Bobby Brink needed to have that type of season to prove that he's NHL caliber, that he could play on an everyday basis, and he proved that last year. So in terms of Bobby Brink, that was a phenomenal season from him. In terms of fans, probably not. It was an okay season. But for Bobby Brink, that was a great season.
Yeah, and they needed to prove who he was. They was always highly talented, Bobby Brink. I was looking to see what happened. I was surprised by the trades. So that means the Flyers are meaning business. The Flyers want to move up, and they were looking for this. Now, I wanted to ask, we were talking about the goalies. This is an interesting situation. I recently just heard the name of the guy from the Canucks, Arto Silvos. You heard about him, right? This guy, what do you said yourself about the free agency. What do you think? What have you heard about this guy? Now, he's a good netminder.
He is a good netminder, but I think that the Flyers are going to lean towards more like Alex Lyon, be a stopgap. He could be a starter, share the load with Samuel Ersson, who they think that might need, maybe another season to get his stuff in gear. The problem with Samuel Ersson, he's good when he's healthy, but unfortunately, he hasn't been able to stay healthy here as of late. And I think that worries the Flyers that they need to do something. I don't expect Alexei Kolosov to come back to North America. I'd be shocked if he does, even though he's still under contract. I want to make that known. He's still under contract with Philly, but that doesn't mean that the Flyers can't loan him to another team in the KHL or anything. But so with question marks surrounding Ivan Fedotov, in terms of going back to Lehigh, they'd have to waive him and send him to Lehigh. They're probably going to do the same to Kolosov if he indeed returns. But I would go after an Alex Lyon who's familiar with the organization. You won't have to overpay for him. He could be a stopgap. He could be a starter at times, carry the load for Samuel Ersson until he gets the stuff in gear. And that's a player that I want, something like that. I don't want them to overpay just to overpay, but when you hire a Rick Tocchet, that means they do mean business, like you were saying. If they hired Brad Shaw, for instance, and that means they're okay with maybe going another year with being on the playoff bubble. But they hired Rick Tocchet. That means they mean business to make the playoffs this year.
I'm glad we're talking about the goalie situation because this is a key thing here. They have talent. Now we're talking about you're talking about Kozlov could not even come. He might not even come. He might not even be a flyer. There's a possibility
he may not. He may not. That is correct. He may not. So they could loan him to another team in the KHL or other. Just not trade the rights, but give the rights away. Like David Kashi, remember David Kosh? David Case. I would say fans know him as. But they did the same thing with Mikhail Vorobiev. They still own the rights. David Kashi, they traded his rights a few years ago in the trade, so they no longer own his rights. But they did and let him play overseas, and that's what happens. They just elect to sign him. Still own the rights. So if they ever do indeed want to come back to the NHL, they'd still be under the rights of the Philadelphia Flyers.
So how high is that possibility that you think he won't be a Flyer? How high is that possibility?
I think it's a high possibility. I think it's at least 90%.
Okay. Got you. Okay. Now we're talking. It's crazy. Now we're talking about Carson Bjornsson. That's another guy. That's a talented guy. But Yegor Zevrin.
Yegor Zevragin.
I'm saying that right. Zevragin. Sorry about that. Now this guy. They talk. Now he's. I see him as the most talented.
Oh, absolutely. Damn right.
I'm excited about this guy, man. I'm like, they got what they get. Like then you talking about Beyonce. He's good, but you know how long we had Motez Tomek, the guy Tomek. He's been there so long. And
he's still. They have indefinite rights. So they have indefinite rights. They own indefinite rights to Matai Tomek. They own indefinite rights to another player, Valtteri Vilisafa. Or I probably butchered his name, but they own his indefinite rights. If they're drafted out of Russia or another league or a European league for that matter, in terms of the Czech or something of that nature, then they own indefinite rights because there's not a definite that they're actually coming over. With the exception for Swedish players, they own indefinite rights. But Matai, he just hasn't panned out. He hasn't proven to the more or less likely. If they play in the KHL, at the time they're drafted or a Russian league that like an MHL, then that means that the Flyers will own indefinite rights for said players because there's no guarantee that they do indeed come over, and that's what happened to Matai. He fell under that bracket. But he just hasn't proven to the Flyers that he's ready. He had issues like earlier in his developmental career. He just played poorly, went to another school. Then this school, he bounced around a lot. So I'm going to be honest. We could stop talking about him. I don't think he's in the plans for the Philadelphia Flyers, but Zevragin is. But his contract is extended until 2026, 27 with his KHL team. And so expect him to come up. But Carson Bjornsson, he's going to need another year or two with the Phantoms. They got to be patient at the goaltending position. They've been impatient before and have bit the bullet. So they can't do that again. But Carson Bjornsson is very highly touted within the Flyers organization. Yegor Zevragin is highly touted within the Flyers organization.
Who do you like? Who you think is the goalies? Who do you like?
Zevragin. I think he's going to be. I think he's going to be something. But he's going to need time too. It's not like he'll just come in here and kill it. You know what I mean? Only certain goaltenders can do that. Like goaltenders like Shesterkin or Sorokin or something like that. Those are two anomalies. That's very, very rare for them to just come in here and kill it. But that's what happened.
He looks quick. Now you said it's a trade that updates on the trade that happened with the Flyers. What happened? What was the trade that went down?
So the Flyers traded pick 36 to Seattle for picks 38 and 57. At 38, they selected Carter Amico, which is a right-handed defenseman at a USDNTP program. He's very big. He's a Hulk. He's 6'6" on the blue line.
Okay, so going to the last, the defensive man. Now we know that he traded for Zegras. Zegras is a friend of Drysdale, right? They're like,
yeah.
And so we're looking at the defensive end. What do you think? What do you think for the defensive end this position? Is it getting better? Do you like what you see after the defense going through?
Yes, I do. Rasmus is injured until about this November, December-ish. He's going to be out. So the Flyers need to, find somebody on the back end. I think you'll see somebody like a Nate Schmidt, possibly come here via free agency. He's not a star, he's not that flashy defenseman or whatever, but he's a solid NHL defenseman who'll give you value for, what the Flyers want, which is like a 1 or 2 year deal max. But that's who you're going to see the Flyers target. Somebody to like hold the fort down until Rasmus risks the line and is able to come back healthy. But you mentioned Drysdale. Cam York is also best friends with Trevor Zegras. They're like the three musketeers. So I expect Cam York to be resigned here possibly as early as maybe Monday or Tuesday too.
Yeah. Good. Wow. All three. That's going to be good. But now we're talking
and I think Zegras bumped that. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what you think about the Zegras? What you think about that trade?
I loved it. I freaking loved it. I loved it because it's a low risk, high reward type situation for the Flyers. And that's the type of deal that John Tortorella said that the Flyers would like to make for years. They wanted reclamation projects. Don't forget that Owen Tippett was a reclamation project coming from Florida. Don't forget, that they've had other reclamation projects like Ryan Poehling, who is also a reclamation project who came from Pittsburgh. Right. We seem to forget that at times. Ryan Poehling wasn't this good before he entered Philadelphia. He was on the outs with Montreal and on the outs with Pittsburgh, obviously. And what happened?
Yep. No question. And going through then the next, what you think the Flyers are going to, or you think they're going to go for a goalie? I think they're going to go because they always been going from last couple of years. Yeah. Do you think they go for a high prospect goalie right now?
I think they will. So now they have 4 picks in this round now because they gained one. So, I think that they will go for a goaltender. I think you have to. They need to shore up some of these positions. And that's why I think they went after Carter Amico. That shores up the right-handed position in case, eventually down the line, if they think that Hunter McDonald isn't going to be that guy on the blue line. So now they have one, So, but I appreciate you having me on, leader.
Yeah, great. I want to give you one more joint before we get out of here. This is my. Now I always say 2 years. I say 2 years. How far do you think the Flyers are from winning?
From contention, I say 2 to 3. And the reason I say 2 to 3 is because there's a lot that's riding on a lot of these prospects, like Denver Parkey, Oliver Bonk. People are in love with them, to include myself. I like them a lot. I'm very high on them. In the same token, they're going to need time to develop themselves. You don't want to rush the prospects. If they're ready to make the next step, they'll be here. But I think right now the Flyers are hoping for some of them. And that's what I mean, is just hope. So realistically, you don't really expect Jet Luchenko to make the team this year. You don't expect the Porter Martone to make the team this year. You expect the Flyers to just do some of these, situations like a Trevor Zegras adding like depth players to try to maybe make the playoffs next season. So this coming season, you just expect them to make the playoffs. After that, it's going to be up to the prospects to see how far they go.
Right. Thanks for having you on, man. High Level Sports Talk, man. You my guy.
Thanks a lot, man. It's a busy day. It's draft day, but I love it, man. So I'm happy you called me on this day. Appreciate you, man. I'll come on once a month for you, my man.
Got you, my man. We're going to do that.
All right. Take care. Thanks for having me on. Your dedicated follower.
No problem.